In many ways, the pandemic forced companies and organisations to actually embrace remote working. And we've seen this before. If you looked at SARS, the impact in China was to drive online purchasing. So if you look at the way that in China you can do so much through apps, that's what's coming to Australia. And it's been coming, but senior decision makers who've been quite out of it from a tech savviness perspective, they've got no choice but to adapt. And if they don't, then they're going to have their business eaten by somebody else.
Okay, everybody, welcome to the More Chat. We're here to speak to some of the best in Australian businesses, and we're going to provide the audience with the knowledge, confidence, and perspective to do well in today's market. Up today, we have Butterfly. Butterfly are a tech development company based in Melbourne. They've won over 64 awards, including being named Melbourne's best agency. So they work hand in hand with businesses to transform them. They strategically plan, design, and build complex digital assets, such as websites and applications, to increase their productivity. They've got big goals. They're planning to work with hundreds, if not thousands of companies to transform their businesses, increase an extra $1 million in revenue per year by use of their digital bolt-on services. So today we have their leader, we have their captain, and that's John Anderton. Everybody, welcome John Anderton. Hey, John.
Morning, Ed. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing not too bad at all. So let's kick straight through, John. What we like to do to give the audience a bit of an insight into yourself, we like to ask you about your past, present, and future headlines. So if there was a newspaper headline to describe your past, what would it be?
So I grew up in Perth and I initially studied aerospace engineering. I dropped out of that and completed an economics degree. In aerospace engineering, that's the first time I was exposed to the internet in the 90s. Obviously, it's slightly different now. But I found that boring. So I switched to economics, which was really interesting for myself, nobody else. But anyway, I completed my degree in America and I really enjoyed that. After university, I worked turning around struggling businesses, and that exposed me to a turnaround situation in quite a few different industries. In that process, I was quite good at turning around struggling businesses, but I could see the benefits of what the internet was going to bring. So I founded Butterfly to bring companies or bring the tools to companies. And that sort of digital transformation is what we like to do. So we like to help our clients with their projects to transform the way they interact with their end users. And also for our staff, we like transformation on a personal level. So give an opportunity for our staff to grow, and obviously for myself as well.
Cool. Nice. That's not a bad summary. You should work for the Daily Mail. Good. I like it. And Thanks. So like 2020, I don't know if they could write any more column inches about it. I don't know when they'll stop writing about it. The journalists have got like an endless supply of stories to write about it. It's a crazy year. And obviously you are deep into the digital and tech space. How do you think this will change things in the upcoming months and upcoming years for people working in this space?
The first thing I want to say is obviously with the pandemic, there's a tremendous amount of suffering and pain, both of people getting dying or being sick, as well as businesses and particularly entire sectors like restaurants being dramatically affected. And I don't want to diminish from that, but what I want to talk about is the way that we respond to the challenge. If you look at what I think is happening, we're seeing an acceleration of trends that were always happening anyway. So, for example, empowering employees to work remotely. It's really about using the technology tools to connect and facilitate an employee to create a lifestyle that they want. Do they want to work in regional Tasmania? Can they do their work just as effectively? But from a management perspective, command and control doesn't work, and it hasn't worked for a long period of time. If an organisation is managing staff by time in chair, that organisation is in real trouble. So in many ways, the pandemic forced companies and organisations to actually embrace remote working. And we've seen this before. If you looked at SARS, the impact in China was to drive online purchasing. So if you look at the way that in China you can do so much through apps, That's what's coming to Australia, and it's been coming. But senior decision makers who've been quite out of it from a tech savviness perspective, they've got no choice but to adapt. And if they don't, then they're going to have their business eaten by somebody else.
Yeah. And had you, before this happened back in March, had you been doing this before? Like, had you, within your company, did you have remote working? Were you trialing this? Was it working?
Yeah, look, we've been very lucky. About 2 years ago, we drove an initiative to move to a paperless organisation, and as part of that, we sort of moved a lot of systems to the cloud, and we embraced Google Docs and electronic signature, as well as empowering people to use laptops and having more space. Now, the reality is that in our organisation, most people only sort of adopted it on a very sporadic basis. But we got very, very fortunate that we did that, because push come to shove in March, we just sent everybody home at lunchtime one day, and our systems luckily just worked. I think we got lucky in that regard. I don't really consider it strategic, but for myself at an organisational level, we've had so much benefits from moving to paperless and embracing cloud ways of collaborating and documenting. For us as an organisation, it meant that we could focus on more the next level, the cultural integrations, and making sure that people don't become disconnected from each other. And our team, I have to say, I'm really humbled by the quality of our team leaders and our team in general. Everybody's checking in on each other's mental health, and our team leaders organised muffins to go to everybody's house for Are You OK Day, and they're organising competitions and activities, and it's just really humbling to see that emerge from the team, because everyone's able to care for each other. I am seeing other organisations really struggling with the transition, particularly if they've got an old school mentality and a culture that doesn't sort of trust their employees to do the right thing. I will also say, we're based in Melbourne, and the extended lockdown is definitely dragging on people's mental health, and we're seeing that. But luckily, we had a really tight-knit crew beforehand, and that's helping us carry through.
Cool. That's good to see when you can look back at the team, and it's not just the leader, the captain who's pulling the reins, but everybody's all sticking in. That's when you know there's a real strong culture being built within the team.
Yeah.
That's cool. And so, just to kind of backtrack, the name Butterfly, can you just give me like a little rundown about how that, because obviously butterfly, when I think of butterfly, I think of transformation. Is that how that originally came about for yourself?
Look, I'd like to say that it's a really symbolic, deep meaning of transformation, and take organisations from crawling around on the floor to flying through the air. The reality is, I wanted to, I was driving across Australia, and I'd stopped at Uluru. I was sitting on top of Uluru, which is obviously now frowned on, and I was contemplating what I wanted to call the business, and a butterfly flew past. That's where the name came from. Now, luckily, we're able to layer a lot of good symbolism on top of that metaphor. But purely a butterfly flew past, and that's what the universe wanted me to name it.
That's cool. That's a cool story. I like it.
Thanks.
And then we like to be forward thinking on this podcast, and it's easy to write about the doom or gloom. You can flick on your Facebook and find plenty of that. Have you got any examples of, or anybody you know who recently have gone above and beyond, and they're achieving what they set out to achieve?
Yeah, definitely. I want to talk about Ed Barber. So Ed runs an organisation called the Jolly Miller Group. They've got a chain of cafes on the periphery of Melbourne, as well as a B2B business where they supply cafes, maybe 400 cafes across the CBD. Obviously, in the first lockdown, they're dramatically affected. They couldn't operate, and their customers couldn't either. Now, they had a factory in Sunshine, they had trucks, they had staff. What they did is they quickly put up a Shopify website and started delivering business to consumer. It created, something for the employees to do. A little bit of hope is obviously very good to have, a positive outlook on where things are going. But more importantly, it brought cafe quality foods directly into the homes of people, so they didn't have to risk going out to a supermarket. And it's been tremendously successful. So they're approaching 1,000 deliveries a day. Later this week, they've got a customer, a big corporate, organising 5,000 deliveries over a 2-day period to their customers. And it's been tremendously successful. So they've been able to build up quite an impressive business that will continue well past the pandemic. Now, Ed's really pouring himself into this. He's working very hard. Sometimes he's at the factory at 2 a.m. He has meetings at 6 p.m. He's really pushing hard, but he deserves the success he gets.
Cool. And do you think that's going to be a sign for, especially if we talk about Melbourne, like people who just stay in the game? Do you think they're the people who are going to benefit in the long run?
I think this is true of any sort of catastrophe or disaster that comes in from the external environment. People will get to choose if this event is the end of their journey or if it's simply a stepping stone. And that I think is true in life, no matter where you are. Yeah, if you're a restaurant that goes bankrupt, a bankruptcy is considered bad, but actually it can be a point where you reconsider your life. If you go to America, the culture is very much more positive on bankruptcy and moving forward. Yeah. I don't want to diminish the personal struggle that will go through that. But there are restaurants and cafes transitioning to online. You're seeing Providor, which is really coming out of Maha. There are some really great success stories. Where I see ultimately the restaurant industry going is that, yes, a lot of people will fall over and probably not come back into the industry. Some will stay, and then they're looking at an environment where there's a lot of their competitors are no longer there. From friends in Western Australia that supply the industry there, it's booming. There's a lot of pent-up demand, and I feel that's going to happen in Melbourne too. The transition out of lockdown is going to be difficult, but effectively, if business owners can stay in the game and keep moving, and I think from no matter what industry you're in, if you don't keep moving forward, then you're at risk of decaying anyway. It's just a natural fact of life that if you try and stay where you are, the market moves anyway. So you've just got to keep moving forward. This may be an opportunity for people to reconsider their life and their life purposes.